Call the regular meeting of February 6, 2018 to order. The invocation will be given by Councilman Landig this evening.
Heavenly Father, we thank Thee for this day. Help us to use good judgment for the business at hand and guide us in wisdom with a continuing sense of truth and fairness for the community we represent.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Here.
Mr. Marne? Here. Mr. Blake? Here. Mr. Donovan?
Here.
Mrs. Dowling? Here. Mr. Kirchner?
Here.
Mr. Krieger?
Here. Council, you have the minutes of the organizational meeting of January 9th, 2018.
To approve. Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling? Yes. Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Before we get to the public hearing, I want to say, I'm assuming that all you people showed up to see how I handle the second meeting of my presidency. But we have a public hearing tonight. This public hearing is being held pursuant to notice duly published and posted according to law. I would like Julie to read the legislation.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Mentor 2006 as amended and the official zoning map by rezoning of 19.0917 acres from R4 Single Family Residential District to RVG Village Green District at 7343, 7391, 7399, and 7411 Chillicothe Road.
Mr. Filipiak.
Mr. Traub, please.
Thank you. As members of council are used to my doing with such proposals, there are several videos or visuals that I'd like to share with you, so I'll offer my remarks from the podium. Thank you.
It's not real wise.
The applicant and the proposal before you this evening is to rezone approximately 19 acres fronting on Chillicothe Road, which is depicted on the aerial photograph here, from its current R4 single-family residential to a classification that we've certainly worked with quite a bit over the last couple of years, RVG, which is a village green designation and would allow for the construction of 47 single-family units on the property. The Municipal Planning Commission informally reviewed this project in November, and a formal hearing on the rezoning was conducted in December of 2017. At that time, there were several issues that were presented before the commission. What I'll call the lesser of the two was relative to a century home on the property. The Planning Commission asked for, and after the Planning Commission's dealing with the rezoning with their recommendation, that report came in, and I tried to provide a synopsis of that report in the pages of analysis, and there are some problems associated with that. The larger issue this evening is relative to the interconnection between the existing Remington Street and the proposed connection to Remington within this subdivision. There are a number of documents that certainly that we can refer to. The staff report makes mention of the fact that in the initial platting and subsequent recommendations of the administration back in 1986 that the administration recommended that proposed dead-ended streets would be constructed to include temporary cul-de-sacs. And as this aerial photograph depicts, the residents are well aware and council is aware, there is in fact a temporary cul-de-sac on Remington at this point. Upon further investigation, viewing actually the plat from 1986, there is a notation on that cul-de-sac indicating that it is in fact temporary and would be removed at such time as the street is extended. In addition to just the planning formality, the history of the plat indicating that that was the intent of the administration, and we believe that of the Planning Commission and Council to make that extension. The fire department has also indicated in their most recent comments, as have police and other departments. And just for, this was not included in the initial exhibit, but I think helps tell the story from a variety of department perspectives. Again, the project that's under consideration now is, we see the current end of Remington, the cul-de-sac at the end. I'm sorry, I'm covering everything up. The subject property outlined in black, and from the standpoint of general planning in the neighborhood, you can see that both to the west as well as to the east that an attempt has been made, certainly not in all cases, but in a great many of them, to connect streets that otherwise might be cul-de-sacs to improve safety access as well as the delivery of other government services. And I would point out just to the southwest, the Ridgeside, Belvedere connecting streets. Those, of course, were platted to be connecting neighborhood, and there was not the delay that we're dealing with here this evening. I'd like to review a couple of other facets of the subdivision, just for everybody's clarification. That being that the minimum lot width that's being proposed here, all of the minimum lot widths would meet the requirements of the district. They would range from 55 to 120 feet in width, and have building setbacks that vary from 30 to 83 feet. Again, a number of the village green developments that council has looked at of late have attempted to vary the building setbacks so one does not look down the road and each house is lined up exactly the same. And the fact that these streets, as I'll show you in just a moment, are somewhat curvilinear will add to that. Another facet that Council and Planning Commission have been concerned about is relative to the provision of open space, and to that I will share with you another illustration. Again, included in your council packets. And the public saw this as a part of the rezoning request. Again, open space areas are indicated here. In this area, and then a more modest one located over here. This is an existing pond, and there's a proposed detention basin over here. In adding up the open space, we're looking at a plan that provides about 3.7 acres of open space, about 19%, so slightly above what our current planning parameters are as far as provision of open space. As I indicated in my opening comments, this would be Remington Drive as it's currently configured, and this would be a dedicated street. The Planning Commission noted in their discussions relative to street length that the existing Remington was in excess of about 1,500 feet. And again, as council is aware, the attempt is to keep cul-de-sacs no longer than 600 feet if planning principles can be brought to bear to plan a development that provides an interconnection. Another comment I would share would be relative to traffic impact, and this goes to the issue of interconnecting streets, but also goes to the issue of potential traffic on Chillicothe. And according to the developer's estimate, approximately 9.5 trips per day per household, and that translates into about 446 trips total. We would like to see that number, having used the ITE trip generation rates, but I think generally we're in the ballpark, not a significant number above or below that. We indicated the desire for several other improvements. We talk about the provision of stormwater, which I previously mentioned, but also that sidewalks be installed along Chillicothe Road to improve connectivity, if you will, of neighborhoods, and certainly the desire to provide access for residents of this new development to Menor Avenue. The declaration of restrictive covenants had been prepared and reviewed by the administration. I briefly summarized those in the staff report, and the one item that I would or two items that I would share with council. One is the concern that we've had with some of our developments relative to finished materials on the front elevation, and the covenants do require a minimum 25% of the front elevation shall have brick stone or stone-like material used on the front elevation. So that addresses one concern. Second concern is relative to driveway finishes, and this specifically indicates that concrete driveways would be used in all instances. The other items are more or less what we've typically seen in terms of other restrictive covenants that have been used of late in the city. I would finally note that the Planning Commission in their recommendation include 5 conditions, which I can place on the screen. And certainly you can read them yourself, but comments per the city engineer and fire department be addressed with the subdivision plans, with the exception of fire department's comment number 3. Fire department's comment number 3 pertain to the interconnection that I previously mentioned, that the developer would be responsible for extending Remington Drive and removal of existing concrete paving and sidewalks located in the temporary cul-de-sac easement and replacement of curbing, driveways, and sidewalks on the 2 sublots on the existing Remington Drive cul-de-sac. That the declaration of restrictive covenants should be incorporated as a condition of the formal rezoning, disposition of the Century House to be approved by City Council, and then finally that the developer shall add a gate between the proposed Remington Drive and the existing proposed Remington Drive and the existing Remington Drive with a Knox box system for emergency use. Just in closing, I would note that there had been some discussion relative to the use of a intermediate pavement, that there would not be a pavement connection between the existing Remington and the proposed Remington, and that there would be controlled access via using a Knox box. That, in fact, was the Planning Commission's recommendation. That is not the administration's recommendation. Our recommendation is to see a continuation of the pavement as was initially envisioned with the subdivision. If there are any questions, either myself or I'm sure other members of the administration would be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Traub. Are there any comments from the applicant? Please state your name and address.
Yep. George Davis, president of Pro Built Homes. My personal address is 7962 Butler Hill Drive, Concord, Ohio.
Thank you.
President Kruger and the rest of council, I want to thank you for your time this evening. It's an honor for myself to present this rezoning to you. I think it's a fabulous piece of property, and as a local builder, I feel honored to have got to work with the homeowner, Mr. Zook, to as part of his estate planning to see this property developed. My offices have been in Mentor for in excess of 10 years. We are a local Mentor business. We would be using all local trades and suppliers, so this would be a good boon to the economy, unlike a lot of the other national players that are in town that do construction. As far as this property goes, I feel it's perfectly suited to Village Green. The plan that we have come up with provides useful open space. We have walking trails. We're able to preserve the pond, a gazebo. The plan is to preserve most of those large trees along Chillicothe. Was just talking to a resident here about all the nursery stock that's there, and whatever nursery stock is left, we would use to incorporate into the common areas. So, as Mr. Traub eloquently explained, we are using curved roads and varying setbacks to again provide a much more appealing development than the quote-unquote cookie-cutter ones you would see. The product that we would be building there would be a more upscale product. Prices would be probably $350 to $475. This would provide good move-up housing for residents of Mentor, that is much needed in Mentor. Quality built, custom homes. I feel it would allow for aging residents to build a new modern floor plan branch home and stay in the city instead of moving out to Concord, so to speak. Also, with the quality of Mentor schools, there's a strong demand for families in Mentor, and again, this subdivision would provide those move-up buyers with modern floor plans. So I'm real excited about presenting this to you. I feel we've really done a good job of incorporating what's needed in Village Green. Through this process, we've learned that, as was brought up by Mr. Traub, that the residents of Winchester, Winchester Hills there, they have a strong desire to not see the connection. So coming out of Planning Commission with the discussion of having the gate, I provided some additional details, one of which would, shows the gate, another which shows the intermediate pavement, which, would allow fire trucks to drive over the grass between the two, as well as, just the straight connection. Through that process, another plan was also developed. A plan that has 2 entrances and exits off of Chillicothe and no connection at all to Remington. I don't want to be the big bad developer. I want to be a good neighbor. I want to be a good resident to the city. I understand about connectivity and planning, and I also understand that this is America, and maybe there's some degree of self-determination after 30-some years of not having a connection. So I want to be a good member of the community. I'm okay with proceeding with a connection. I'm okay with proceeding with the intermediate pavement and or without the gate. I'm also okay with going back to Planning Commission with the plan that was developed through this process as we were trying to work with the residents of Winchester Hills or Winchester Woods.
So, Mr. Davis, if I understand you correctly, you've developed another plan, an optional plan that you'd like to take back or modify to planning?
Yeah, I would be willing to do that.
It's a little unusual. I mean, I would recommend you keep your current plan because they've got recommendation on that. Let them review your modified plan. I don't know if you have 1 or 2, whatever, Yeah, it's kind of unusual to go to planning with more than one plan, but in this case, I think it would, I think the law director wants to make a comment on that.
Well, I'm not sure that I heard him say he wants to take it back. And I think that's got to be the question at this point in time. Are you asking to take it back, or are you willing to take it back? Because, as it is right now, it gets heard the way that it is. But council is not indicating to you to take it back. It's your choice whether it goes back or not, or whether you just go forward tonight. So that's what I wanted to clear up. Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, with the
President.
permission of council, I would like to go back.
Okay.
With the alternative plan.
Does that
to
answer
see
your
if that
question?
can't be worked out.
It does. He's very
Okay.
specifically said he wants to take it
Okay.
back. Not that he would agree to take it back if we put that on him.
Okay. Thank you very much. Oh, wait, Mr. Marne?
Question for the law director.
Yes.
So if George takes this back, right, and then let's call it Plan B, goes to planning, and it's not approved, or it's modified to such an extent that it's not going to work out for everyone involved, can George come back with the same exact plan?
Well, and yes, because that's what I wanted to make clear with this, is that under the code, council can actually initiate a rezoning. It doesn't have to come from an applicant. Council can initiate a rezoning. And what we're going to do is we're going to use that prerogative here because you have received a recommendation from planning. So what I suggest that we're going to do is, if he wants to take that other plan and have that looked at also, we refer this back to the Planning Commission as it is, so that if he has two plans, and this is unusual, okay, I've been here for 30 years, I haven't seen this happen before, but, we try to be flexible. We refer this back, and Planning Commission has this plan already, and you can add another one and they can vote on that one. So you might have two plans receiving a favorable recommendation or not, but both have to come back up here. That's why we'd refer it back. They both have to come back up here, because under the code, even today, or if it comes back, you can accept, reject, or modify the plan. And so if you have two, you can accept, reject, or modify one of them and defeat the other. But this can get referred back and stay on first reading here, to then go to a second reading and then go to a third reading. And if it's not back by that third reading, get tabled. But ultimately, the objective would be you come back with a menu for council, with what it would seem like two different plans, with conditions that relate to both plans.
Mr. President, if I could just clarify one thing. When this comes back from the Planning Commission, they will make a recommendation, they will choose a plan, am I correct? And they will
My
recommend that to
expectation is
us,
they'll
or-
send both plans back.
That's what I think will happen too, with recommendations on both.
All right.
The referral is, take this plan back, add the other plan, and, look at both of them, and again, give a recommendation on both of them.
Okay. I think that's agreeable.
Okay? Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Of course, it might be out of order because it's.
Is there anybody in the audience wishing to speak in favor of this item? Sir? Podium, state your name and address, please.
Mark Medaya, 7372 Chillicothe. I think I'm most impacted by this because the entranceway of this development is heading right into my house. Headlights, everything comes right into us, cheaper. And we already talked to George, which is a great guy. He said he would make a berm of some sort with some shrubbery to not allow that type of, because there's going to be ultimately 500 cars coming out of there if they don't do the tie-in. And by the way, we don't want the tie-in. on Chillicothe, because we see traffic right now, unbelievable. And my point about the second alternative, if he has two entrances going into the subdivision,
Let me stop you there. We haven't seen the second plan.
no, I'm saying, though, if he wants two entrances, it's on a bend. Chillicothe's on a bend. It's tough enough to try to get out of there where the entranceway is right now. That's this proposed plan. But if he tries to add a second exit or entrance, it'll be devastating to accidents, because it's right on that bend where people come in, and they'll come in at 45 miles an hour, and then they're gonna see the traffic coming in or out. So, you know, I think that may be, yeah, you're gonna have to look at the statistics there or whatever. But my point is, this is a beautiful piece of property. He's doing a nice job laying it out. I'm in favor of him putting this in, especially in the value of the houses. We're excited to see it happening. But we just want to make sure, and it's public record, that I have some kind of say-so that we're going to get a type of berm. So, I mean, listen, I was sitting we were watching the Super Bowl at the house. We had everybody out. I go, guess where that driveway is going to end up? Right there. And it's going to be coming right into our house, the headlights. And this is what we don't want. We just want some kind of commitment that he's going to, and he said he would.
Okay.
And that's about all I got to say about that.
All right, thank you.
All right?
Okay, now let me take, is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition of this item? And Mr. Stone, I think,
I'm not sure what's going on here.
well, this is to speak, anybody that wants to speak against this in the public meeting about this development.
I would say that the Winchester Woods Homeowners Association is here to speak against the connection.
Well, this is where it became confusing. I'm going to rely on the law director, because now Mr. Davis is going to take this with a modified plan back to the planning commission. And then once the planning commission gets done with that and the recommendations, it'll come back up to council again. So if you're asking me what you should do with this, I mean, if you want to speak, that's great. Otherwise, the next forum after the public hearing is we actually have the legislation. And that legislation, at that time, it's already been indicated, will more than likely be put on first reading, which means we won't discuss this until after the planning commission comes back up to council.
So it sounds like we'd be best served to wait and address it then. I've seen a lot of council shake their heads, yes.
Okay. Okay, well, yeah, they like you at the podium so we can discuss this, so. With your name and address.
My name is Jim Stone. I live at 9595 Musket Drive, and I'm here along with Mr. Rumpinell, the president of the Winchester Woods Homeowners Association, and Tim O'Donnell.
Yeah, I saw you had Sashi, I guess, Tim O'Donnell and Jim Stone. And I guess what I was trying to say, and they wanted you there so that it can be recorded,
That's fine.
is this more than likely tonight will go to legislation on first reading. Mr. Davis will take his paperwork, his modified plan for the Planning Commission to review, give their recommendations. Then at that time, both those plans will come back up to council with their recommendations. And at that time, I mean, it's up to you. You can make your presentation tonight, but not knowing what the second plan entails, you might want to wait and see what that plan is.
Yeah.
Okay, the law director wants to join.
I can't help but get some floor time every once in a while. My suggestion would be, you came here prepared. You may have a new item, or maybe not, but you may illuminate another issue tonight that you know, the persons in this room are not entirely familiar with. So if I'm you, I take the opportunity to state what you wanted the council to know now, so that that's on the record as part of the potential referring of this matter back to the planning commission. You know, I think you got everybody here. Let's hear it.
All right, Saji, you're
I
up.
will do it. I guess it was difficult to understand if we were speaking in favor or against the plan that we weren't clear what that plan was. So we're speaking I guess, in opposition to the connection. My name is Sajia Rumpanail. I live at 7355 Demshar Drive in Mentor. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. We'll go ahead and go through some of our concerns. I've been living in Mentor for about 18 years. Like I said, on Demshar Drive, 3 kids. I'm also the president of the Winchester Woods Homeowners Association. And instead of all of us coming up and talking, we have 3 people that are going to come up and share their views. Right. So just as a representative of who's here from that community to support, if everyone could just please stand up to give you an idea of the commitment we have from our community to in opposition to this connection. To start, I would like to say we're here in favor of the design that George Davis and the Planning Commission agreed upon with a non-public connection with Remington and Chillicothe. We've been informed, though, even though the design that was came out of the Planning Commission, we've been in conversation with city administration, and they spoke earlier about their desire to connect to a clean connection, a public connection from Remington through Chillicothe. Just in general, we were at the Planning Commission meeting. We spoke there. The Planning Commission did look at the concerns of the police chief at that time, and they did strike out the number 3 comment from the fire chief requesting the public connection for Remington at that time. But basically, we're concerned about the connection because it changes the sense of community interaction in our neighborhood. I realized that 30 years ago there was a plaque created that said this cul-de-sac was temporary, but much has changed in those 32 years. Even the intent of housing that was discussed at that point is being discussed and modified, so things can change over 30 years. And also, because those things have changed, 30 years have gone by, no outlet was there when we purchased our homes. This was a strong consideration for our homeowners when we looked at the different types of options available for us, and we purchased a house in a development with no outlet. And there was no indication at that time that this was temporary during that transaction. So what's happened in the last 30 years? Basically, our neighborhood has happened. My house is on the corner of Demshar as you come down in Remington, and it serves as the bus stop for the elementary school and middle school students. If you look on Google Maps right now, if you pull up that corner, you'll see 3 bikes sitting there because those kids have gone off to school and left their bikes there so that when they come home, they have a way to get home. That's the kind of neighborhood we have. We have a cohesion and sense of community. We interact with each other. Kids play together. We have neighborhood dodgeball games, and we consider each other friends. We watch out for each other. The Mentor paper that was mentioned, that we all get in the mail, had an article entitled "Choosing Mentor, Finding Home," subtitled "Cul-de-sacs and Kids, Parkland and Waterfront." That summarizes why we're here in Mentor. You have a combination of cul-de-sac privacy and the amenities that this great city provides us. There's a noted psychologist once observed, people who live in a traditional bulb cul-de-sacs have the highest levels of attitudinal and behavioral cohesion, covering both how they feel about their neighbors and how much they actually interact with them. People who live on your average residential through street have the lowest levels. That's what we don't want to lose. We're also concerned this cut-through connection or this public connection will make our neighborhood more dangerous for our residents. Just as the fire chief expects to save seconds in minutes to reach your house for emergency vehicles, we expect motorists to do the same to bypass King Memorial between 84 and Chillicothe. Research shows that as traffic volume increases on a neighborhood street, so does vehicle speed, accident frequency, noise, and even crime. It also shows that using neighborhood streets to avoid main road congestion tends to drive at those drivers tend to drive at a higher speed. The combined effect of a cut-through street, increased speed, and volume makes neighborhood street even more dangerous. A pedestrian is 6 times more likely to die if struck by a car traveling at 30 miles compared to 20 miles an hour. Mentor High children are dropped off at the top of Demshar in Route 84 and have to walk down Demshar to reach their houses. Demshar Drive is narrow, doesn't have sidewalks, and has drainage ditches on both sides. When cars do come down the street, the kids have to often go onto the street, get out of the way. This is manageable today with the low amount of traffic we have, and we feel that it's acceptable the way it is. Our neighbor whose house sits at the intersection of Demshar and Johnny Cake, I think sent the council a letter outlining in a lot more detail what that intersection between 84 and Johnny Cake looks like, and the type of road Demshar is, and how this connection would require improvements to support the increase in traffic. I hope you had a chance to read the detailed letter from a state licensed professional civil engineer that has 15 years of professional experience in municipal work. He explains in great detail, more than I could, the potential danger of connection will create. All it will take is a 21-year-old to speed down our development, to save a few minutes, to change one life, one family, and our entire community. I understand the need and appreciate the push for increased response time. But if you're going to argue safety, you have to also look at the much more impactful daily decrease in safety this will cause. Finally, I'd like you to look at the new development that's going in with the 47 beautiful homes on this Village Green format. It's supposed to promote a sense of community with our households and residents. Now, the traffic assessment that was mentioned earlier talked about 446 trips using a calculation. One thing that that traffic assessment didn't account for was the additional houses that would also use that connection. So it only looked at the 47 homes that were going to be newly created. It didn't look at the additional 69 homes that I can promise you I'm going to use that to get to Chillicothe. So if you add those houses on, you're reaching upwards of 1,100 trips a day at that point. Now, that doesn't even include additional traffic going through that will use it to get past the King Memorial and bypass that street. So I think that number was a little understated in terms of if there was a connection or public connection. All this being said, we appreciate the concern and push for better emergency responsiveness. We appreciate the cost of saving seconds or minutes in a once-in-a-million situation, but we feel that's outweighed by the increase of through traffic that will alter our community and make it more dangerous every single day. The proposed GeoGrid or gate will allow for this additional emergency access without sacrificing the community and our safety that we currently experience. And just to help show our unity on this, we have two petitions that I believe we've provided for you. The first talks about our desire not to have Remington connect to Chillicothe, and all of the residents that we contacted have signed that petition. The second is a statement that the residents of Winchester Woods accept the existing response time from police and first responders that we experience with the current traffic patterns, and that we oppose the connection of Remington to the newly proposed development of the Mentor Heights Nursery. We respectfully request that you do not consider this improvement of emergency response time when deciding the connection of Remington to Chillicothe, as the residents signed below deem it unnecessary and unwanted. Hopefully you'll consider these viewpoints. We've worked together closely with all parties involved. I think there's been a lot of good discussion. We've been respectful of the process. I hope this shows that we're here as part of the community to find a good solution for everybody. And thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you. And now I believe Mr. O'Donnell. You want me to put that on there? Well, because that right there. Everybody coming up.
Good evening, Council and Administration. My name is Timothy O'Donnell, and I reside at 9606 Musket Drive with my wife and 3 children. I'm a career fire lieutenant with 20-plus years' experience in the fire service. I'm a proud member of the Winchester Woods Homeowners Association, and I am here to represent and share our overwhelming support for the Planning Commission's recommendation to not approve the public through street into Remington. Our greatest concern is the safety of every resident in the Winchester Woods Division and of Dempshire Drive. Dempshire Drive is an old village road that is narrow, 20 feet in width. Per City Codified Ordinance 1115.03, Dempshire Drive is consistent with a cul-de-sac road in which it currently functions as. Not the minimum 22-foot wide road which is required for a local street per ordinance. Also, Dempshire Drive has no sidewalks, is poorly lit, and has a skewed approximate 55-degree intersection where it meets Route 84. Dempshire Drive is ill-equipped to handle the increased traffic that would be created by Remington Drive being connected to the Mentor Heights development and other traffic created by this public through street. Each member of council was sent a detailed email today further explaining Dempshire Drive's deficiencies by Mr. John Sabo, a certified civil engineer of 15 years experience in the municipal service, and also a Dempshire Drive resident. I plead that the safety of our children and residents of our community come first and play a vital role in not allowing Remington Drive to become a public through street. In my research, I was able to find 3 different residential areas within the city where similar of a public through street arose and mutual solution was agreed upon by the city and the homeowners association. First, Hidden Hollow between Hidden Glen. Secondly, Chase Drive and Anchor Drive. And lastly, Grace Court and the Marshview Landing area. These 3 past practices show a willingness of the city of Mentor to work with their residents and find a workable solution. We, the residents of Winchester Woods Homeowners Association and Dempshire Drive, have met several times over the last couple months and have had positive and encouraging communications with Councilman Blake and the builder, Mr. Davis, and several other city leaders. We will continue to remain professional and courteous in our stance to preserve our proud and quiet community. In closing, these petitions presented tonight speak louder than words. This is true democracy at its finest. Our ultimate goal as a neighborhood is to work together with the city, find an amicable solution, and most importantly, maintain a safe community for the residents of Winchester Woods and of Dempshire Drive. Council, as your constituents, we ask for your support in keeping our community safe, deny a public through street, and approve the proposed and approve the proposal of not allowing the public through street. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Stone?
My name is Jim Stone. I've been a resident of Mentor for 40 years, and we have lived on Musket Drive at 9595 Musket Drive for 30 years. We raised 4 children there. We chose this neighborhood because of its safety and security and its lack of traffic, very little traffic. When we purchased our houses, the developer never told us that the cul-de-sacs were temporary. As a retired Mentor Police Sergeant of 22 years, I know there's always more problems than speeders on cut-through streets. All you have to do is look at Mansion Drive. The problem there with the cut-through traffic was so bad, I believe they had to install speed bumps in the middle of the road. In the Westmore Road neighborhood, that's a cut-through from Route 84. I know I wrote at least 100 tickets for speed and stop signs. And I was just one of the many cops on the department. Our police department historically has been understaffed and can't effectively police all the residential streets. That's why in the mid-'80s, the city bought one of those speed monitoring trailers, you know, the one they stick on the burb, and it slows traffic down for a while. Mentor has also at least 90 residential streets longer than 600 feet with only one entrance. I've provided council with a map, and let's zoom out a little bit here. I have highlighted 90 neighborhoods in this city longer than 600 feet that only have one entrance. Those are highlighted in the pink. You can see the blue. There's 10 industrial parks that are longer than 600 feet with only one entrance. That's a lot. I mean, you look at that, it seems like it's a third or a quarter of all of the city. Now, because Mentor is just about out of vacant residential land to develop, our neighborhood might be the last one that the city can force to use as a cut-through. Now, to do this while leaving the other 89 neighborhoods intact, that would be grossly unfair and a grave injustice. It's obviously not imperative to connect the neighborhoods and create a second entrance, because if it were, you would be taking homes by eminent domain, demolishing them, and building connecting streets through the backyards. We know that's not going to happen in this city, so I ask you, why force this unwanted connection on our neighborhood and not the other 89? It hardly seems fair, does it? The petitions that we presented to you against this cut-through were signed by 124 adults representing 66 of the 70 homes in our neighborhood. But most importantly, it's been signed by 100% of the people that we were able to speak to. And we made extra efforts for those people we couldn't reach, just couldn't reach them. Not included were the 52 kids under 18 who will be at risk if this cut-through is approved. We know from past practice the city has worked with 4 other neighborhoods in similar circumstances to reach a just and fair solution. To what Tim mentioned, Hidden Hollow, Chase Drive, and Grace Court, I would also mention Echo Drive and East Echo. At one time, it actually had a barricade between them. Now it just has a bunch of grass or reeds or something growing up there. Besides the map and petitions, we have also provided you with other relevant material, including a copy of a recent Mentor City magazine that you use to advertise our city. And that would be this one. It advertises and boasts, quote, "We are a city of cul-de-sacs and kids," and talks about, quote, "the unparalleled quality of life Mentor offers to its residents." We're here to ask you to not single us out and take this away from us. As a police professional, I know the best enforcement considers the totality of the situation. You know, a ticket or an arrest is not always the best solution. Likewise, the best judges also use compassion and fairness. One has to look no further than Mentor's Judge Trebitz to see the truth in this. So that's all we're asking, for a solution based on past practice that is both compassionate but also fair. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to respond to any of these comments?
I have a great deal of respect for their concerns, and provided the drawings that could show how we could do the geogrid, provided the drawings how we could do the gate. There was some initial concern about putting those in a right-of-way. We came up with a solution of having it be common area of my development, so that would take it out of the right-of-way. So I think we've provided a path if that's the way you guys want to go. I still feel strongly I'd like to go back to planning with the Plan B, as it's been referred to, that might be a little more pleasing to administration possibly, and maybe council.
Hey, thank you. Council is in receipt of all correspondence and emails received pertaining to this matter. This public hearing is now adjourned. New legislation. Julie? Ordinance. This one, right? What's this?
You say.
Oh. Ordinance number 18-0-008.
An ordinance amending the codified ordinances of the City of Mentor 2006 as amended and the official zoning map by rezoning of 19.0917 acres from R4 Single Family Residential District to RVG Village Green District at 7343, 7391, 7399, and 7411 Chillicothe Road.
Mr. Filipiak?
No further comments at this time, Mr. President.
Oh, thank you.
Mr. President,
Yes.
I'd like to move to put this on first reading and refer this item back to the Planning Commission for review of the 2 plans that Mr. Davis spoke of tonight.
Any other comments?
Are you also asking to have the Planning Commission make a recommendation on both plans and send them back?
Richard, you're reading my mind. I was just thinking that. Yes, I would like to include that in my motion.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Question. How is Planning Commission going to review the plan that's already sitting in front of us on our agenda?
I'm sorry?
How is Planning Commission going to review the plan that's already sitting in front of us on our agenda when it's already they've already approved it with stipulations, and it came up here and it's sitting here before us? Wouldn't we have to take it totally off our agenda to send it back?
I don't believe so. You know, I think that we can, you know, again, this hasn't happened before, okay?
That's why I'm asking.
I know, and we're not making up rules as we're going along. There is in the chapter that deals with zoning amendments a provision that says that the council can initiate, you know, a rezoning. And I am interpreting that to also mean that because you have a rezoning before you, that you will use that provision that permits you to initiate an amendment to refer this plan back to the Planning Commission along with the other plan that's been brought up so that they can review both of them. Is it perfect? No. But it is the answer that I offer as lawful and supported in the code, because you can refer this back, you can initiate an amendment, and you can also, when passing upon a plan that's in front of you, accept, reject, or modify. I would suggest that the ability to modify also envisions referring it back to, you know, in the rare instance where the council wants to rely on the Planning Commission to give it their review. If you wanted to amend a plan that had been sent to you, you thought there was some new wrinkle that needed to be looked at, not just by you, but by the Planning Commission, who spends time going to their seminars devoted to just planning, send it back to them. You're taking advantage of that opportunity to have the Planning Commission bring their level of expertise onto this. And some of the persons up here have been on the Planning Commission and know that a lot more time is spent evaluating these subdivision plans than necessarily gets done at council level, because they fix everything and hand it off to you. So let them take another look at this new plan, or take a look at this new plan, and review any new wrinkles that may come up with the existing plan, because that could easily happen. From the time it would leave here tonight and go back to the Planning Commission, somebody might have a different idea or a different solution. And I would suggest put it all back to let them pass on it.
We asked them. I don't know, I'm going to shoot a bunch of holes in it. You asked them. I'm just not going to shoot a bunch of holes in it tonight. But I got it. I have to actually, for the first time in 18 years, rewatch part of a meeting that I've already been at. But we'll talk later.
Having had a second, would you read the roll?
Yes. Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes. Ordinance number 18-0-008 has been put on first reading. Ordinance number 18-0-009. Julie?
An ordinance to authorize revisions to appropriations and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Malinowski, please.
Thank you,
Everybody have a good evening.
Mr. Filipiak.
Darn.
Members of council, this ordinance authorizes an appropriation revision to the 2018 budget. We have a separate fund known as the subdivision tree, street tree fund, and there is enough cash in the fund already. We're just simply appropriating budget to utilize those monies. I recommend approval. Thank you.
Move to suspend. Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Landig.
Yes.
Mr. Marne.
Yes.
Mr. Blake.
Yes.
Mr. Donovan.
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling.
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner.
Yes.
Mr. Krieger.
Yes.
Move to approve. Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Ordinance number 18-0-009 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-010.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to award a bid contract to TC Construction Company, Inc. for Contract B and alternates 1, 2, and 3 of the 2018 road repair program and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President, and as is our practice from recent years, we'd like to be among the first to get our road project out there to bid so that contractors have the best opportunity, while the contractors are eager for work, to lock into the most advantageous quote possible, and that seems to be proving to be the case for us. This is the concrete portion of our road program for this year, and I will point out, as you will see here in subsequent legislation, that I think for the third year now, Dave, is it the third year, we're cooperating with the City of Mentor-on-the-Lake to include their portion on this to be able to take advantage of some size in the contract. Mr. Swigger?
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. 5 bids were opened on Friday, January 26th for Contract B of the 2018 Road Repair Program. The project will provide full-depth concrete repairs to portions of 6 city streets. The streets included in the base bid are Constantine Court, Corporate Boulevard, Elizabeth Court, Fracci Court, Steeplechase Drive, and South Weatherby Drive. Quantities bid under alternate 1 will be utilized for work within Mentor-on-the-Lake. Quantities within alternate 2 will allow for additional work on these streets within the city of Mentor as quantities allow. And the quantities in alternate 3 permit reconstruction of inlet basins within the contracted streets. The bid package consisted of a base bid and 3 alternates. The 5 bids received for the base bid and combined alternates range from a low bid of approximately $400,000 to a high bid of approximately $425,000. It's been determined that TC Construction Incorporated of Willoughby Hills, Ohio, submitted the lowest total bid of $396,820. It's therefore that it'd be recommended that a contracting amount of $396,820 be awarded to TC Construction Incorporated, who are experienced and qualified to perform this work. Thank you.
Any questions?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie?
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to passage.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig? Yes. Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Yes. Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Ordinance number 18-0-010 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-011.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to award a bid contract to Chagrin Valley Paving for Contract A and alternates 1 and 2 of the 2018 road repair program and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of council. This is the asphalt portion of our contract, which is, of course, the larger portion. This will address 17 streets throughout the city. Mr. Swigger.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak. 5 bids were opened on Friday, January 26th for the 2018 road repair program. The project will provide asphalt resurfacing on 17 city streets and full-depth repairs on Hendricks Road. The streets included for resurfacing are portions of Ambleside Drive, Brighton Road, Clover Avenue, Corduroy Road, Crossfield Avenue, Farnham Drive, Hawk Avenue, Low Ridge Lane, Middlesex Road, Perkins Drive, Plains Road, Roosevelt Avenue, Rushton Drive, Sherwood Drive, South Cedarwood Road, Summit Drive, and Thistlewood Drive. The bid package consisted of a base bid and 2 alternates, which included work within Mentor-on-the-Lake. The 5 bids received for the base bid and the alternates range from a low bid of approximately $980,000 to a high bid of approximately $1,100,000. It's been determined that Chagrin Valley Paving in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, submitted the lowest total bid of $981,340.71. The engineer's opinion of probable construction cost was $1,112,500. Review of the bid from Chagrin Valley Paving indicated that it was in conformance with all contract requirements. It's therefore recommended that a contract be awarded to Chagrin Valley Paving, who are experienced and qualified to perform the work, in the amount of $981,340.71. The scheduled final completion date for this project is August 17th, 2018. Thank you.
Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner? Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move for passage.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Ordinance number 8-0-011 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-012.
Ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into agreements with the city of Mentor on the Lake for the 2018 road repair program and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
Thank you, Mr. President, and we're very happy to cooperate with our friends at Mentor on the Lake on many different levels. We believe that this agreement has been advantageous to both communities, and we recommend approval.
Move to suspend. Second.
Call the roll.
Close. Council President, just
Yes. Yes, yes.
listen. Yeah. Point of information, the agreement, maybe it covers it in Chapter 7, but like our discussion and during the work session, we have another partner here. And should for any reason Mentor on the Lake not go ahead with their work, I note that in the asphalt contract, on the main bid in Mentor, number 2 bidder is lower, Roniak, than the number 1 bidder. Would that present a problem for us that's not covered in the language of this resolution we're about to pass?
There's a question for you.
Well, I consider this to be the lowest bid at this point in time for all the components that we intend to award and have the contract performed. So should something change, there's always an incident where in the middle of a contract, something changes and you adjust. But at this point in time, it's the lowest bid for what we intend to do. And if something changes, we'll adjust. But I don't see that as any reason for the other bidder to later complain that they would have been low bid. That would have required us to know that there was going to be that breach. And I just don't think that's reasonable.
Okay.
Thank
Does that
you.
answer it? Thank you.
Yep.
Council, what's your pleasure?
I made a
You have it?
motion.
Okay.
Motion second.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Please read the roll.
Mr. Landig? Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve.
Read the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Ordinance number 18-0-0012 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-013.
An ordinance to levy assessments for the construction of certain sidewalks in Zone C associated with the 2016 pedestrian safety program in the city of Mentor and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Swigger, please.
Thank you, Mr. Flipiak. The city sidewalk contractor, A&J Cement Contractors Incorporated, has completed repairs to the sidewalks in Zone 2C. Approximately 1,354 slabs of concrete sidewalk were replaced through the assessment process on 283 properties. Cost of construction of the assessed portion of the work was $224,250.55. Administrative costs for mailing and advertising totaled $3,746, or $13.24 per property. Total aggregate cost of the assessment includes the cost of construction, administrative fees, plus interest, and totals $241,677.32. A publication for the notice of the estimated assessments ran in the News Herald for 2 days on December 8th and 9th of 2017, and then was published on their public notice website for 3 weeks, starting December 10th, 2017, and ended on December 31st, as required by the Ohio Revised Code. Residents who were provided 2 weeks to make objections to the estimated assessments on file with the Clerk of Council. Written objections were required to be received by 5 p.m. on January 16th, 2018. No objections were filed with the Clerk of Council. This legislation is an ordinance per the Ohio Revised Code, Section 729.09, for assessments for the construction of sidewalks over parcels as shown on Exhibit A. Upon council approval of this ordinance, the total assessment against each parcel of land can be paid to the Director of Finance of the City of Mentor within 30 days. After the 30-day window to pay expires, the assessment totals will be sent to the Lake County Auditor for collection with the general taxes in 6 semi-annual installments over a 3-year period. Additionally, a notice will be published in the News Herald stating that such assessment has been made and is on file in the office of the Clerk of Council for inspection by the public. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. President,
Mr. Marne?
questions for the administration. So if I remember correctly, we started in Ward 2, right?
Yes.
Okay, so was it 2A?
Were you 2A when you lived on Chase? So, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it 2B?
No. Yeah, right, yeah, okay. So, okay, so this, well, I guess
Case-
I'm
that
getting,
Case
I guess
Cattle
I'm
area
getting
was
to,
the
this is the
first.
9th year of this, so we're going, when we went clockwise, so 3, then 4, then
What's the
1.
Fifth year, right there?
Started in Ward 3.
Started at Ward 3.
Let's say, yeah, with,
Now, we
All right, well, I guess what I'm getting to is, okay, so we break it down, we do the same amount every single year, okay, and it's roughly, a couple, call it between 2 and 2,500 slabs. So when we finally come around for how many times it's gonna be, okay, we're gonna do less and less every time we come around because there are gonna be newer slabs or be where slabs never were. When are we gonna finish the program, or is it an ongoing program like our DEER program?
It's ongoing, and I think you made the best point, which is, once we get through the initial city completely, and what, Mr. Swigger, what did we estimate, 15 years? 17 years is
Okay.
a
so I was
first
thinking-
cycle. I suspect that cycle number 2 will be a much shorter overall length of years, because we'll be able to take larger areas, because the sidewalks will be predominantly upgraded. But no, we don't anticipate ever changing the program. It's perpetual. It's the best way for us to maintain that pedestrian access that we're after.
Okay.
So we're doing a lot
It
of
seems to be
catch-up
working
right
well.
now.
I guess that's my
It's been
follow-up. It's, that's,
very, very
do we need to make
successful.
changes, or continue to monitor as we go? Okay. All right, thank you, sir.
Hey, council, what's your pleasure?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake? Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve. Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Ordinance number, what's it, 18-0-013 has passed. Ordinance number 18-0-014.
An ordinance authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with Burgess & Nyepel LLC for architectural services to design a cemetery maintenance and office facility and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I will turn this over to Mr. Kaminsky momentarily, but it's worth mentioning that this project, of course, is the replacement of the existing small maintenance building that services the cemetery, the city public cemetery. I know council took great interest in this item during our discussions during our budgetary meetings. I know that some of you have had the chance, well, all of you have had the chance and have visited that location to see the current condition. What we're asking you to do today is go forward with simply the design agreement. This will allow us to present to you then a version of what we anticipate for replacement, and then we anticipate that council will want to be involved then in making a determination whether or not to go forward currently or at some future date. Mr. Kaminsky?
Thank you, Mr. Flipiak. This ordinance calls for Burgess & Nyepel LLC to provide architectural services to design a cemetery maintenance and office facility to replace the existing facility. The current facility needs replacement due to the lack of space for the public to utilize our services, lack of space for the equipment needed to operate. We currently store maintenance equipment outside, and most importantly, there is no handicap accessibility to the office. The restrooms are non-conforming. The building is not ADA compliant. Work to be performed by Burgess & Nyepel includes a complete set of working drawings eligible for construction bids, along with site survey. A statement of qualifications were reviewed, and the firm's experience, along with the types of services offered, met our desired qualifications. We recommend entering into a contract for design and pre-bid services for $71,500. Thank you.
Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. Blake?
Ken, did we give them any sort of guidelines in terms of what we would like to see in these architectural features? Do we want something similar to what's there now, which looks like something you would see in a cemetery setting? Or, I mean, do we discuss, or did you guys discuss that with them?
We did. As a matter of fact, that was one of our primary considerations. Burgess and Nyepel was not the only firm that we looked at, but we also solicited some examples from Burgess and Nyepel of their past work. It is our intention, and we have communicated it to them, that we would like a building that, for lack of a better term, befits that setting. So in other words, something that is understated yet perhaps in a more classical style, understanding that what we build there is something that we certainly don't want to stand out for any reason whatsoever, other than that it's looked upon as an attractive building. So we envision something that will be predominantly a masonry built building with some architectural features that will look attractive and stand the test of time while still providing the functionality that we're missing right now.
Okay, and will council have the option of looking at these drawings, these plans, and maybe having choices, or, I mean,
Well, I think I think what we will
options.
ask of them is to provide us some preliminary sketches of what they intend, and we will happily share those with members of council, and try to work toward something that we can all feel comfortable with before we give them the go-ahead to proceed toward final drawings.
but I'm glad to hear that it's being done in a
And
very
as a matter of
sensitive
fact, we're
way.
happy to entertain that as a work session item once we have those.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Ken, are there utilities out there? Sewer, water, electric, everything ready to go?
There are, and that's one of the advantages of building in that same location.
Mm-hmm.
Those are to the building right now. I'm sure that some of the pre-engineering will evaluate the condition of that, and they've been there building's been there a long time.
Yeah.
But servicing the current building, so that is one of the advantages of that location. Council will remember that in past years, we have actually appropriated dollars for a new building to the rear of the property that was less thought given toward the architectural presence there, and that was something that we rejected, and was because first of all we thought it was too big and in the wrong spot, because again, considering that public cemeteries in particular, and most cemeteries are there for many lifetimes. So while, long after each of us is conducting public business, that cemetery will be there. So what's to the rear today is very much a part of the landscape, 50 years from now or 30 years from now, and when those areas and those sections are opened up. So we felt that the current location is a good spot, given the nature of the work out there and the fact that it isn't likely to change in any meaningful way over the decades to come. Marginally larger building that'll meet our current needs for equipment, but we didn't want to overbuild, so it's a good spot for us.
But I understand some of the equipment had to be stored outside, so
Right.
that'll be inside, out of sight. Thank you.
Right.
I have a question to clarify with Mr. Kaminsky in relation with what Mr. Blake said. Are we going to have two separate restrooms, one restroom for the public and one restroom for the employees?
That still has to be designed, but that's what we're hoping to have.
And last would be two administrative offices. Why do we need two offices?
One for the secretary and one for the sexton.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. What's your pleasure?
Move to suspend.
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve?
Second.
Call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Ordinance number 18-0-014 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-015.
An ordinance approving a minor subdivision at 8643 East Avenue and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Filipiak.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Traub, please.
Thank you, Mr. Filipiak, members of council. You have an aerial photograph that's included as an exhibit to this request, and I think that adequately tells the story. The situation is that the proposed parcel B does not conform to the frontage requirements for the manufacturing district. The requirement being 150 feet, the proposed Lot B would just be 100 feet. Therefore, it's being brought to you for your consideration. And taking a look at other sublots on East Avenue, we note that there are 5 that range in width from 104 to 111 feet. So there are other substandard lots in the vicinity. In examining the proposed use of the 2 buildings, it was felt that to stay with what the applicant recommended, the 100 feet would best serve their requirements and the city as well. Finally, I would note that the setbacks of the existing buildings meet or exceed the requirements for the light manufacturing district, and that parking arrangements, the provision of adequate parking for both buildings is addressed, and there will be separate drives for each of the proposed buildings. There was a question relative to provision of utility service connections. I discussed this as recently as early this evening with the city engineer, and that will be reviewed again prior to the filing of any documents, Mr. President. Thank you.
Anybody from council? I have one question. The written confirmation that was required, confirmation as to the disposition of the city engineer's comment and shall be submitted with the site plan submitted to city council. Are you in receipt of those written confirmations for the cross easements and so on?
No, I'm not.
No, sir.
Well, that's a new one, Mr. the Law Director. Can we proceed without having the written confirmation? Because we ran across this problem previously, and I'll give you the example.
Well, this can't be completed until additional, and I know it seems like somebody here wants to say something. This can't be completed and filed until we take additional action, the administration. And I guess the suggestion would be that you can leave it up to the administration to make sure that those final actions are taken before, you know, the final approval would go through at the county.
Still has to be signed off.
I'll leave it up to the administration to get the confirmation in writing, because as all of us know, we've had this problem in the past with not having cross easements, especially when it comes to parking and so on, in writing. Comes back to, you know, to council saying, you know, people have actually chained off the lot in between 2 lots, and I don't want to see that happen in this situation, so I'll trust you to get the written confirmation.
I'm not sure why.
State your name and address.
Stephen Roth, working at Bernstein for the applicant. I'm not exactly sure why nobody has the copy of the reciprocal easement agreement, because that was sent. So you guys should have it, but I've got a copy of it right here, and it's actually been amended to address any parking issues. It's a reciprocal easement between both parcels. And this would be filed with the documents. So I worked with Rick Spence to be able to get that taken care of last time. So I don't know if it's because he retired.
Yeah, I know he retired, so.
Right. So I don't know if that's part
Is
of
that
it.
copy available to be left?
I do not have a copy available right this second to be left, but I can resend the email that has everything in there. So
Okay, that'd be great.
yeah,
That'd be
I mean,
great.
it should address everything. So
Okay.
Mr. President,
Yes.
Yeah, well, of course, we can assure council that until all such papers are in order, we wouldn't consent to the deed being confirmed, so
Okay, I appreciate that. Council, what's your pleasure?
Move to suspend.
Second. Julie?
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Move to approve. Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Hold on, do we have another comment on this?
No, we have extra copies. She
I
had
have
said
a copy I can leave with
Okay, great,
council,
I'll
if
just leave it,
that's acceptable.
if you leave it right there on the podium,
And that-
administration will get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Ordinance number 18-0-015 has been approved. Ordinance number 18-0-016.
An ordinance approving a minor subdivision at 7400 and 7414 Hart Street and declaring an emergency.
Mr. Flippia.
thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Traub, please.
Thank you, Mr. Flipiak, and members of council. Again, there is an exhibit that's included with this request that I think adequately illustrates what the applicant is proposing to do. As the staff report points out, we're dealing with two existing parcels. The applicant's proposing to re-subdivide those into three on the west side of Hart Street. And per my previous comments, the requirement is where lots not conforming to the required either area or frontage are where they're not met, it does require bringing those before both Planning Commission and Council for approval. This is the situation that we're looking at here. The Planning Commission recommended approval of the plat that's before you now in late December and provided for 70-foot wide lots for parcels B and C, and parcel A would be 66 feet. The minimum lot requirements would be met in the case of all three parcels. A secondary concern was relative to driveway and garage, and again, code sections are cited as to the requirements, and you'll note that one of the conditions that the administration had included, it is included in the Planning Commission's recommendations, is that construction of a paved driveway and a detached or attached garage residence at 7400 Hart Street be located on parcel A prior to the issuance of a building permit for improvement of abutting parcels B and C. If there are any other questions, members of council?
Mr. President, I believe that the contractor actually, or the owner of the property actually committed to pulling the concrete out of one of the...
That's correct. Yes, the second condition indicates that the applicant shall remove the existing concrete pad.
Thank you.
And as members of council are aware, we have had problems with concrete remaining after demolition projects, certainly on a much larger scale than
Right.
this one, but
Thank you.
we want to have it addressed.
I have one question also. In two different places, it says we're gonna take parcel A and we're gonna increase it from 41 to 66 feet in width. And then in the next paragraph, it says we're increasing it from 46 feet to 64. Do we know whether it's 64 or 66?
It's 66 feet, if I'm correct.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. And I see we have a gentleman at the podium.
Yes, I'm
What-
Andy Chanfalione.
Would you spell that for her?
Yeah.
The last name is Cianfagalione.
Thank you. And your address, sir?
I reside at 13842 Radcliffe Road, Chardon, Ohio.
Okay.
I'm here on behalf of Brandy. I have one question. The recent condition of the home that's existing there, it's an older home, it's small. And I know we have to add a driveway and a garage to it. Well, seeing the inside condition of the home and the work that needs to be done to bring it up to code and to make it marketable might be over and above what it's worth. So if we do decide to tear it down, does that still comply where we have to put a driveway and a garage on that lot first before we get building permits on the other two parcels?
Mr. President, I believe at the planning meeting, it was stated that you were going to remodel that home, pull that driveway,
Right,
and then continue on with the construction of the other two lots.
right.
And after that, I'd have to talk to Richard about that one.
A lot of firsts in
Mr.
there.
President?
Our intentions were to remodel it,
Right.
but being in the home and we did some inspections, and the electrical's gonna have to be brought up to code. The plumbing's gonna have to be brought up to code. And taking those two things in consideration, the added cost of the remodel is gonna put it way up above market value. So you're gonna put money in and you're not gonna get anything back in return. So we might entertain the fact of just tearing it down and make it, and just having a third lot. But one of the stipulations was that if the home does get remodeled, the driveway has to be installed and the garage has to be installed before they will release any permits on partial A and B.
Right.
Are you wanting me to comment on?
Yes, please.
Well, I guess my comment is, I think there's, from my perspective anyway, there's a limit to how much we do on the fly.
Yeah.
And, you know, all of a sudden, the plan is changing, and I wonder if it shouldn't get tabled for the administration to be able to take a look at this and maybe reduce to writing what the new conditions will be, if they're going to be new conditions, to this going through as a subdivision. So, I mean, that's just my reaction, that, we need to be clear about what you're going to do, because, it would have helped if you would have brought this to the attention of the administration before 5 minutes ago.
The situation is, the landowner had a rental, it was being rented, and she had tenants in there, and you couldn't even walk through the basement. I mean, it was
Well,
packed.
that's more reason to say, that maybe this ought to get tabled and have the administration take a couple of minutes to see what you're going to do. Yeah, just, that.
I'll make a motion to table.
Well, what we could do is leave it on first reading.
Okay.
All right, so.
Then you could get it straightened out.
Yeah, get it figured out.
All right, good.
Make sure, go ahead, John.
No, go ahead. I mean, you want to put it on first reading?
Motion for first reading, yes.
Second. Good. Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes. Okay, the 18-0-016 is put on first reading. Okay, second reading, we have none. Third reading, we have none. On my best part, manager's report.
I thought you'd never ask. Thank you, council. We have two open pavement cut requests for your consideration this evening. The first is from Aqua, Ohio, for work related to the replacement of water lines on Low Ridge Lane and on Perkins Drive. And just as a reminder to council, this is about 1,480 feet in the case of Perkins and 2,120 feet in the case of Low Ridge. And this is a part of the work that was required to move forward with replacing what you will recall was an original privately owned system that Aqua agreed to take on. So they have been providing water to this through the old system, which is 2-inch ductile pipe out there. And so this will be a significant upgrade to an 8-inch pipe, which also provides a loop system for better fire protection.
Move to approve.
Mr. Chair.
Mr. Blake?
Before we get there, We're repaving both Perkins and Low Ridge this year, so is this going to happen first, I hope? Instead of
Yeah, the
going and
aqua
cutting
hire
up
work
on
will
new
happen
pavement?
first,
Okay, Dave, I knew you would be on top of that. I'm just connecting the dots.
Just to remind all of council, we always coordinate our
No, you do.
resurfacing and repaving work with Aqua Ohio and the other utilities in advance, so we know what they have up
You see, when I
their
saw Low
sleeve.
Ridge and Perkins mentioned a second time, I said, hey, we're repaving those. I better make sure. I knew you guys would be. Thank you.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Thank you, council. And then the second open pavement cut request is from Union Industrial Contractors for work related to the location of an Aqua Ohio water line in connection with the replacement of the Hopkins Road Bridge over Martin Elm Ditch.
Seeing how there's no paving there, I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Julie, call the roll.
Mr. Landig? Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Thank you,
Clerk's
council.
Clerk's correspondence?
A few more items, if you
Oh, a
don't
few
mind,
more
Mr.
items?
President.
Oh, darn. I did that last time too, didn't I? That's right. We're fading here.
Thank you. The two-town ditch detention project is moving along quite nicely. Contractor recently stripped the topsoil from the work area and constructed the stone construction access drive. They are also began excavating to create a temporary sediment trap, which will remain in place during the duration of the construction activities, and until all the disturbed areas can be stabilized with vegetation. After completion of the sediment trap, the contractor will proceed with excavation and hauling activities over the next several weeks. And then, of course, the contractor at Springbrook Park is eagerly awaiting that material to be transported there. And I know because this question is coming, the answer is yes. We have street sweepers ready, at the ready, to be able to take care of both of those roadways. And it will be a little messy, so we ask our public for patience, but in the end, you're going to see nice end results on both ends of that project. Bow season is now over in the city, and the city's hunting program has also come to an end as a result. We had 50 deer that were removed by our private hunters this year. Deer culling started this week, and at Wildwood, the Lagoons, and Bellflower Park and Morton Park, and that will continue on for the next several weeks. Father-daughter skate will be on Saturday, February 10th from 12 to 3:30 p.m. at the Menor Civic Ice Arena. The event includes lunch, a photo, and ice skating for dads and their daughters, ages 3 and up. And we would ask them to call the Recreation Department or to register online for that event. And then finally, we have several new businesses to welcome to the community. Clothing Cottage at 9354 Mentor Avenue. Great Lakes Gastroenterology at 8877 Menor Avenue. And then we had one relocation in the city, which was Great Lakes Eye Care, which moved to 7240 Center Street. So we thank them for their investment in the community, and we wish them best of luck.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Fotiak. Clerk's correspondence. Julie?
Council is in receipt of a liquor permit transfer from DK Pubs, Inc. at 9055 Menor Avenue to Menor 9055 LLC at 9055 Menor Avenue, and also Menor Municipal Court month-end report for December 2017.
Thank you. Commission committee reports. We had the meeting minutes for Municipal Planning Commission, December 21st, 2017, and Tree Commission for January 10th, 2018. Any old business?
Mr. President?
Mr. Barn?
Sometime last year, we sat down and we reviewed in a work session Village Green, and we
Yes.
gave a bunch of different ideas. I'd like to review that once again, sit down here in the next few weeks, especially after, what we've been through here tonight, and, get an update from the administration on what they think we can and can't do to kind of spruce things up a little bit.
Thank you, Mr. Marne. Any other old business? Any new business?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Landig.
Thank you. In light of the letter we received on the same subdivision that Councilman Martin was talking about from Mr. Sabo, who is a professional, he makes a couple of claims that I'm wondering if the administration has either investigated yet or would. He said that if we went through with the Remington extension, we'd have to widen Dempshire because it doesn't meet the arterial width of the street as is. And possibly more importantly, he makes a claim that the intersection is inadequate either for future increased traffic or even an existing traffic situation. So if that is true, and then someday there carries some possible risk, and if the administration could evaluate whether that is an accurate claim or not, with an inadequate intersection to Johnny Cake from Dempshire, I'd appreciate it.
Happily do that.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Mr. President,
Mr. Martin?
I don't know if anybody else has received a lot of this lately, but as we know, taxes always come at the beginning of the year. And especially with the increase in our taxes locally, I've gotten a lot of people. One was this morning at the gym, right after I saw Sean right after, yesterday at lunch, yours truly, talking about how much their taxes have gone up. Well, it seems like these people that are approaching me or calling me or emailing me think that it's from us. So I have to take a step back and explain to the residents of Mentor that the city of Mentor, we receive our main lying share of our revenue from income tax, what's called 2/3 to 70%. Real estate taxes are what the schools received. So for example, we want to have jobs here. If you have jobs, you have to have buildings in order to have these jobs. Those are real estate taxes, mainly go to the schools. If you people live in Mentor, once again, real estate taxes mainly goes to the schools. We'll receive, Dave, what about, is it 7%?
Yeah, 7 to 8%.
About 7-8% of a person's real estate taxes go to the city of Mentor. When you also break down your tax bill, and I even brought mine, it explains to you where all the different monies go. So whether it's the county, whether it's narcotics agency, whether it's Lakeland, senior levies, things of that nature, it breaks it all down. But can we do a better job? Is there a place, and I even went and jumped on, and I couldn't find anywhere, maybe it's a good job for Ronte, where we could even explain where our revenues come from, maybe our quarterly publications, or definitely on our website somewhere, so that people have a better understanding of how we work, because there's a lot of misconception out there, that I found. And most of the times people, I don't know if anyone else has run into this, but they seem a lot, more content, I guess, for lack of better words, of when they have their breakdown, but other people, when you break down the situation, but other people still have a little bit of a breakdown, as I think we all have done recently, where, our tax bill has greatly increased, far greater than probably our property values or our stated household incomes. So, but I appreciate anything you guys could do, because I know it'll definitely help me come this time next year, or maybe in 6 months. Thank you.
You have no one before council, right? Anything else, gentlemen? A motion to adjourn?
Mr. President?
Okay. Mr. Blake?
I'd like to move that we go into executive session to discuss pending legislation.
Pending litigation.
Oh, litigation?
Yeah, that. Second.
Right. That's a different story.
We have a motion to move out of executive
Mr.
session.
President, I would move that we come out of
Julie?
executive session into regular session.
Thank you. Julie?
Second. Mr. Landig?
Yes.
Mr. Marne?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
Mr. Donovan?
Yes.
Mrs. Dowling?
Yes.
Mr. Kirchner?
Yes.
Mr. Krieger?
Yes.
Mr. President, I move to adjourn.
Second.